Connected. So I think we're ready to begin. So I'd like to welcome you all to the third open house for the Land and Lake Master Plan. So we're going to have some exciting information for you guys today that I hope you will enjoy hearing about. My name is Carolina Cotillo. My job title is Project Manager, Roads, Traffic, and Transportation, which I admit is an unusual fit, but I will be your host here tonight due to our regular host not being available. So I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'm going to pass it on to Haider Rajab to give introductions.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Haider Rajab. I am Capital Engineering Leader for the town of Innisfil, and I will be managing this project on behalf of me and Carolina. She will help me to manage this project since original project manager Meredith Goodwin was not able to make it for today. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for the member of public. Thank you for the council of the town of Innisfil they are attending, and also thanks for the things design team, which is they are helping us with this lake and land plan, master plan. It will be very interesting to see the public input and this presentation. So I will let then things design team start with this one. And we thank you for your attendance for this third open public house. Thank you.
Just a couple of ground rules before we get going. We are going to start off with the presentation, and questions will be left for later on. That said, we know that sometimes questions come up as you're watching something and you want to get them out right away. So we absolutely encourage you to put questions in the chat. The chat will go directly to us as hosts, and then we will read them out later on. One thing I would caution you about, if multiple people ask the same question or your question is very long, we may shorten it or combine multiple similar questions. That said, we'll have this written record of all of them. So we know that we can hopefully address all of your questions and concerns. We do ask that both in the chat and on the chance that you do choose to speak, that everybody will be polite and respectful. And we do thank you for all of your input. With that, I think I will hand it on to Stacy from Think Design, who I believe is going to start us off tonight.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Let's get our screen up and running here. Hope everyone had a great, relaxing long weekend. All right, so hello everyone. My name is Stacy Zonneveld. I'm a landscape architect at Think Design, and I'm on the team of consultants for the Innisfil Parks and Recreation Master Plan Update and Lake Simcoe Enjoyment Strategy, or the Land and Lake Plan for short. We are very excited to present to you tonight the draft recommendations and to gather any feedback you may have at the end of the presentation. So let's begin with the overview for tonight's event. Yes, great. Okay, so I will quickly go over the purpose of the study and our progress to date. And then we'll move on to the draft recommendations, next steps, and the question period. So similar to other presentations, we'll be using Slido. To join, you can please scan the QR code on the screen, or you can go to slido.com and enter the number code here. I'm sure you're all experts after having done it at the past presentations. So hope you'll all participate that way as well. So the purpose of the study is to prepare two complementary long-term master plans, one for the land and one for the lake. These plans will guide the town in providing land-based and water-oriented recreation services to residents and visitors over the next 30 years, and within the context of significant growth in Innisfil. Please note that indoor recreation facility needs will be addressed in an upcoming indoor facilities master plan. So tonight we are only discussing outdoor recreation facilities. We have completed several elements of community engagement so far, such as interviews, surveys, and public presentations. So this is an overview of that so far. And now we are working on the draft recommendations and needs assessment, which is what we will be presenting tonight. So first, Leandra from Think Design will be presenting the programs and events section. Then Mary Catherine from Mihak Kelly and Associates will present the outdoor facilities section. Then I'll be back to present the Parks and Trails section. And finally, Kara from Think Design will finish off the presentation with the Lakeside. And then we will have our questions. So I'll pass it off to Leandra. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Stacy. All right, so I will take you through the draft recommendations for programs and events. The programs and events assessment is organized by key focus areas. Program delivery, which is the system of how programs are delivered to the community. Arts, culture, heritage, and events. Outdoor programming and activities. Sport development. And age-specific program needs. So just to clarify, age-specific program needs are looking at every age group and seeing what they in particular need. So these previous focus areas, for example, sport development, is looking at sport development for all ages. Okay. So throughout this presentation, you'll see a similar graphic to this, and it's to show that all the recommendations in this plan will be put into an implementation strategy that outlines the rollout of all the recommendations. So they'll be put into different timeframes, short, medium, and long. So short-term actions are those that should be addressed immediately in the first year or in the next 2 to 5 years. And these recommendations either address an important need or a need to be fulfilled before other actions can be implemented. Medium term are those that should be addressed in the next 6 to 10 years, and long-term actions are those that should be taken in the next 11 to 15 years or after 15 years. Typically, those actions don't address an immediate need, or they require a series of actions first or substantial funding to complete. Also note that recommendations and actions can be ongoing. So they may start in the short term or medium term, and they may be ongoing throughout the rest of the plan. So for programming recommendations, most of them can start in the short term, pending appropriate staff levels, and they would be ongoing for the term of the plan. So program delivery recommendations include to continue joint program planning, increase staff levels, increase marketing and promotion, take actions to further accessibility and inclusion, and program monitoring and evaluation. Arts, culture, heritage, and events recommendations include hiring an event coordinator and event support staff as needed, and developing more arts, culture, heritage events and programming. And that includes both town-led events and programs, as well as supporting community organizations that provide events and programs. Outdoor programming and activities recommendations include continuing to provide existing programs outdoors and developing new outdoor programs, hosting events that highlight new major parks or facilities and amenities, continuing to host community events at neighborhood parks around the town, and increase marketing and communications about parks and outdoor opportunities. Sport development recommendations include hiring a sport development coordinator, developing new field sport programs such as lacrosse or rugby, cricket, and developing new community sporting events such as a family fun tournament. Age-specific program needs, the recommendations included to expand program offerings for preschool, children, youth, and seniors, to pilot new daytime programs for adults, and to hire additional staffing. And now I'll pass it over to Mary Catherine, who will take us through outdoor facilities.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about our outdoor facility recommendations. Next slide, Mike, please. So we've looked at them in terms of different types of facilities, and the first one is courts. And this includes tennis courts and pickleball courts. And we're looking at developing a community-based tennis club at Innisfil Beach Park using the existing courts. And then further on down the line, developing a 4-court pickleball facility for a community-based pickleball club And we'll be looking at locations for that as part of our implementation plan. And then beyond that, to provide additional dual pickleball tennis courts to serve new residential areas and to optimize geographic distribution. And then also to redevelop the sand volleyball courts at the IRC to accommodate expanded use, organized use in terms of tournaments and additional activity in that location. So these are a combination of dedicated courts as well as dual use courts for these various types of sports. Next slide, please, Mike. In terms of ball diamonds, we are looking at mostly relocation of existing ball diamonds and then 2 new ball diamonds to serve growth over the long term. So the Innisfil Beach Park Master Plan and the Town Campus Master Plan look to, in the future, relocating the 4 ball diamonds that are at these locations to a new location. And in terms of the long term, we would look at adding 2 additional ball diamonds, hard ball diamonds to meet long-term growth. So it's a total of 6 new diamonds, 4 of which would be relocates. Next slide, please, Mike. So all of these diamonds are proposed to be located at the Future Outdoor Sports Complex on 10 Side Road as follows. We would look at a phase 1 4-field complex to accommodate hardball and softball. And that's for the shorter term relocations. And then over the longer term, to add 2 additional hardball diamonds at that same location. Next slide, please, Mike. We're looking at, in terms of sports field, again, looking for an appropriate parcel of land to accommodate locating up to 6 sports fields from both the Innisfil Beach Park and the IRC property to accommodate the master plans that are going to be occurring at those sites. And we are looking at 1 new lit sports field just beyond 2051. And no additional unlit fields would be required based on the fact that current use is focused on lit fields. So those are the types of fields that seem to be in demand in the community. And another option to consider is to replace one of the existing IRC fields at this point with a multi-purpose artificial turf field, depending on the length of time that those fields are anticipated to remain there, because it would offer an opportunity to try pilot an artificial turf field, but at the same time retire it when it's time to relocate those fields. Next slide, please, Mike. So we're also recommending that all rectangular playing fields be called sports fields to promote and accommodate multi-uses and to work to proactively accommodate different types of sports on these fields, such as football, rugby, field lacrosse, ultimate frisbee, and field hockey. And that would be in conjunction with the sports field or the sports development position that would work to develop these activities in an organized fashion and use these facilities for things other than strictly soccer. And also to look at, over the long term, things that are not apparently needed right now based on demand, but will likely emerge over 30 years, because that's a long time. And we anticipate certainly things like cricket are becoming very popular in other communities. And we anticipate that that might be something that the town has to provide in the longer term. Next, please. So these, we've divided our implementation timeframe here into short, medium, and long term again. And again, these recommendations are highly dependent upon what happens at the Innisfil Beach Park and the town campus master plan in terms of timing of implementation, and also for some of the other facilities when future parks are going to be developed or improved, because that's when these facilities would be located in those parks. So the first short-term phase implementation projects that we're looking at this point would be to do the phase 1 outdoor sports complex with the 4 ball diamonds and the Innisfil Beach Park Tennis Club development, and to provide dual pickleball tennis courts as parks are improved or developed in the short term, and to redevelop the sand volleyball courts at the IRC, and also to consider the artificial turf field to replace one of the existing ones at the IRC to, if that can be done in the short term and retired by the time it's time to relocate those fields. And also to begin to look for land to accommodate the 6 sports fields from for relocation, and to start calling all fields sports fields to encourage multi-use. The next timeframe would be medium, during which we would recommend developing the 4-court pickleball facility, continuing to locate the dual pickleball tennis courts as parks are improved. And the phase 2 of the outdoor sports complex will be the addition of 2 additional hardball diamonds, and to proactively accommodate multiple sports on playing fields. Now that could happen immediately, but we're thinking that it's going to take some time to get some of these activities organized to the extent that they will need considerable allocation on fields, but certainly some of them can start immediately. And also, again, addressing emerging needs, which would be an ongoing thing beginning in the shorter medium term. Next slide, please. Again, providing the dual pickleball tennis courts as parks are improved, developed in the future, and then relocating. We anticipate the 6 sports fields to be relocated from Innisfil Beach Park and the town campus to occur in the longer term, and again, to continue addressing any emerging needs for new facilities. I think that's the last of my slides. Oh, a couple of questions. If you can use your Slido to help us with these, we'd like to know what, within the past 2 years, requiring us to be more active outdoors, do you think you or others in your household will be more likely to participate in outdoor organized sports in the future? Do you think that your experience during COVID will encourage you to do this, or not, or you're not sure? I don't know when this is finished. I guess, oops, still moving.
Let's give them a few minutes. I also see some new people joining. So maybe those of you who are just joining would like to join at slido.com and answer this question. Maybe give them a minute.
Okay, maybe we can move, yeah, because this have one more follow-up question. What, if any, types of outdoor sports are of interest to you or others in your household if you're interested in becoming more engaged? Rugby. Yes. The ones that seem to be garnering the most response are tennis and geocaching, but I see pickleball is spelled differently in different responses. So if they're not single responses for those.
And for those of you who are maybe new to Slido, if you see an answer up on the screen and you type the same answer, it will cause the word to get bigger. So if you see it up there, don't think, oh, I'm not going to type it, it's already there. Go ahead and add it if that's what you're thinking, and then it will show the volume of responses in the size of the word.
Lots of different interests here. Good. Thank you, everyone.
All right, I am back to present the parks recommendations. So the parks recommendations are organized into 3 focus areas. The first is improve park distribution. So this means we want to make sure all areas of Innisfil have access to parks and amenities within them. The second focus area is accounting for future population growth. So as we know, Innisfil is a town that is growing. So we want to make sure there is enough park space for all the future residents and all the residents of today and all the visitors. And thirdly, we have specific park recommendations. So this means for each park, we have specific recommendations, such as adding a new playground or other new amenities or updates and things like that. So I will go through all of this. So first off is distribution. So here I'm showing some maps that are showing the service targets, which are in the faded green color around each park. And then the settlement areas you can see are in light gray. So what this map is showing on the left is the existing parks of Innisfil. And that map on the right is showing these pink dots where there are areas of parks that are missing. So these are areas that we would want to fill in with parks in the future. Next slide. So here's a list of 20 undeveloped parks that are in the works for Innisfil, and they are all located within these pink dots. So with these 20 parks added, a lot of the missing parks will be filled in. However, on the next slide, we can see that there are still some areas that could use more park space. So the town should focus on adding parks in those areas in the future. Next, we have accounting for future population growth. So here we took the numbers of, or the areas of existing parks and the area of planned parks. This is in hectares, and we compared it with the service targets. So what Innisfil should be aiming for in terms of park area based on population. And we can see that in the year 2051, certain park types will not be, we won't have been reaching our goal. So for example, neighborhood parks, our goal by 2051 is 96 hectares, but we'll be missing about 29 hectares of this. And I will say this does not include road ends. So road ends will definitely help alleviate some of this missing park space, but for now, it's not included in the final plan. I think it will. For community parks, we're also a little bit short in 2051, so we will need more community park space. However, for regional parks, we have a surplus, so that's good news. However, the population will continue to grow beyond 2051, so park space should always be something we need to consider adding in the future. So lastly, we have specific park recommendations. So there are 3 types. We have parks that only need minor improvements, parks that need moderate improvements, and parks that need major improvements. So I'll go through each of these now. So minor improvements includes things like tree planting and naturalized planting, additional seating, shade structures, new paths or upgraded paths, lighting, providing connections to other existing trail networks or new trail networks, as well as signage. And we have an example here of Park 1. This is a make-believe park to show you what minor improvements might look like. So for example, for Park 1 here, we have playground updates. We have adding lighting and trails, adding a shade structure, seating, trash receptacles, signage, and planting. We have pruning and maintaining a natural buffer, and also connecting to wooded areas nearby. So these are all examples of things that would be covered under minor improvements. Next is moderate improvements. So this would include things like upgrades to 1 or 2 existing infrastructure elements, such as play equipment, surfacing, parking lot, etc. And it would also include everything I just mentioned in the minor improvements category. So here we have Park 2 as an example. So moderate improvements for Park 2 could include things like potentially adding exercise equipment or multi-sport court, adding washrooms, updating paths, adding a shade structure, seating, picnic tables, and planting. It could include maintaining the natural buffer and evaluating existing trails, or potentially adding trails or trail options. And again, it could include connecting to nearby new parks. And finally, for major improvements, this could include things like washrooms or change room facilities, upgrades to 3 or more existing infrastructure elements, adding at least 1 new infrastructure element, and all the improvements that were mentioned in the other 2 categories. So here we have example Park 3. So major improvements for Park 3 could include updating the playground, updating the basketball court to accommodate an ice rink potentially. There's also potential to add a splash pad. We have adding a lighting, updating the parking lot and paths or enlarging the paths. We have adding a shade structure, seating, picnic tables, and planting, assessing drainage, and also connecting to trails in a nearby development. So all of these things could be part of major improvements. And finally, for the park section, I'll talk quickly about implementation. So similar to my colleagues, we've divided the time frame into short, medium, long. And for parks, this is mostly based on the useful life of parks. So parks that have a useful life within the next 5 or so years are considered short term. Beyond that is medium term, and then we have long term, so up to the year 2037. However, parks that are in poor condition or have drainage issues or safety concerns, they should all get upgrades first and go from there. So also sometimes park elements might be upgraded before others. So there's a lot of variability there. But that is the timeline we have. And that is the park section. So another Slido question for you. Which parks in your neighborhood would you like to see improvements first? So which parks do you think needs improvements first? And to reiterate, if you see a park there that you were thinking of, you can repeat it and it will get bigger to show us that multiple people have put in that response. Great. All right, I'll give a few more moments here. All right, great, thank you everyone. I'll continue on to the trails recommendations. So for trails recommendations, we are covering, we are continuing to update the trails based on the 2016 Trails Master Plan. We hope to develop a Lake Simcoe trail loop. There will be also new recommended trails and land access strategy. So our recommendations are to continue, as I mentioned, the recommendations from the 2016 Trails Master Plan and add to it. And in adding to it, our priorities are to connect settlement areas, to utilize natural heritage lands, and to integrate with the Transportation Master Plan. So you can see here the map on the left is showing what was recommended in the 2016 plan. And on the right, you can see in black, we have a lot more trails and they are trying to connect settlement areas as much as possible through natural lands. Next, we have the development of the Lake Simcoe Trail Loop. So this loop would ideally go all around Lake Simcoe and be in partnership with other municipalities so that it can be one continuous loop. So you can see I've highlighted it here in yellow. This trail would be a multi-use trail, maximum 4 meters wide. It would support a wide range of uses, such as recreation or utilitarian, like a commuter kind of trail, because it goes across the whole town. It would be off-road, so usually located next to a road, and it could be used all year round. As I said, it would connect to other municipalities around Lake Simcoe, such as Barrie and Bradford West Gwillimbury, to form the continuous loop. In Innisfil, the trail would likely follow the waterfront as close as possible. However, the route you see here is not finalized. So it would be subject to more detailed design once it's actually going to be built. And the route may need to be adjusted based on property constraints, construction, major road improvements that are already happening and things like that. So next we have other new trails that we're recommending. So unfortunately, I can't go through every single trail we are recommending, but I have this example here that is meant to connect Alcona to the Trans-Canada Trail. So this would provide a much needed east-west connection. Again, it would be a multi-use trail. It would follow property lines and go beside train tracks. And it would also connect the Innisfil recreational complex with Centennial Park as well. So these are the types of trails or connections we are looking to provide. We are also looking into smaller scale trails, so trails within settlement areas. And we are working with the town to, on their other development projects, such as the town campus and the Orbit GO station. So here we have a conceptual drawing of trails being proposed around the Innisfil town campus. And as I said, we're going to be working with the town to add these trail recommendations to our plan. And lastly, we have the land access strategy. So the idea here is to achieve trail connections through the use of various planning tools, which focus on partnership and relationship building. So many of the parcels in the trails that we are recommending sometimes go through private property, especially where natural heritage lands are concerned. So partnerships are definitely going to be key there. And we are looking to create a long-term plan that encourages the development of the trail system as parcels are developed and parks are planned as part of the subdivision development process. So all these things should be working together to help develop trails. I think we have another Slido question. So which new trail connections would you like to see happen first? Thanks, everyone. Maybe a few more moments. All right, great. Thank you. I will pass it off to Kara.
Thanks, Stacy. All right, so now we're going to be taking a look at the Lakeside, or we're calling them Lakeside Park recommendations now. So first we'll take a look at mooring buoys and the feasibility study we did on them and how they are not recommended for Innisfil, the town operated boat docking and how it is not operated, not recommended for Innisfil. And then we'll go into the specific Lakeside Park recommendations. So next slide, please. So looking at mooring buoys, we worked alongside WF Baird and Associates, and we looked at 4 key considerations into operating mooring buoys within Innisfil. And this looks at the technical side, which is wave propagation, so the conditions that come in and the water height, the operational side, so monitoring and maintenance that the town would have to do. They'd have to hire a specialized contractor, and of course, the liability that comes with operating mooring buoys within the town. The cost benefit of mooring buoys, so what kind of tourism would it bring into the town? And finally, the privacy, how it's inviting boaters into certain areas and the town's responsibility of monitoring and management. So things like liability come into play when it comes to mooring buoys, just based off of a lot of issues with larger boats and just the waves and the depth of the water. So while mooring buoys are feasible in certain locations within Innisfil, our findings suggest that they have limited benefit to the town and are just a small segment of the boating population. Next slide, please. So next we looked at a town-operated boat dock. With a town-operated boat dock to be financially viable, this operation should include boat slips, a boat launch, a fueling dock, parking, and building for its members. And the building would include things like a lounge, washrooms, etc. So this would require a significant amount of land and water. So outside of Innisfil Beach Park, there is really no space along the Innisfil shoreline for this sort of operation to take place. And it's currently not in line with the Innisfil Beach Park master plan. There's a number of other pressures that come along with a town-operated boat dock or marina, which includes the relocation of the existing boat launch in Innisfil Beach Park, the pressure it would put on the parking at Innisfil Beach Park, and then the study also found that it would require a permanent breakwater to be installed. So overall, Innisfil's waterfront is removed from the core business areas of Innisfil, meaning a marina wouldn't really attract the income anticipated as well. Next slide, please. So when it came down to the Lakeside Parks, or road ends, as we were previously calling them, we've come up with a categorization for all the road ends that are being addressed. And they come down to the neighborhood, the community, and the regional. The neighborhood parks would be smaller parks that are generally less accessible to the average resident of Innisfil. This doesn't necessarily mean accessibility from a mobility standpoint. It's ideal for users that are within a 10-minute walk of these locations. And you would not require a car to access these types of lots because there's generally not parking at the neighborhood level. So some examples would include Algonquin Avenue, West Street, Tall Tree Lane, Alfred Street, and Lindy Lane. From the community side, these ones are generally larger in size, but not always from the neighborhood parks. There are locations that may have parking, may not have parking, and they have higher quality beaches, maybe more amenities like lookouts or docks for fishing. So some of these would include Big Bay Point Road, 13th Line, 7th Line, Maple Dudley, Bel Air Community Beach, and Berry Avenue. And then finally, we looked at a regional standpoint, which is generally larger plots of land that could also have the opportunity for expansion and would be more accessible to the general public with proximity to parking, and they would have increased accessibility improvements. So some of these could include Guest Road, Side Road 30th North, 9th Line, Isabella Street, and Shore Acres Drive. Next slide, please. So instead of doing a time frame for the Lakeside Parks, we focus more on the development priority from a high, medium, and low standpoint. So what classifies a Lakeside Park as a high priority are parks that should be developed first based off of information that we've received from the town, as well as an analysis of park use, access, and drainage issues, which we see at a number of the Lakeside Parks. Medium priority would be developed after the high priority parks. They would see moderate use, but would require less improvements due to the park use, the access, and again, the drainage issues. And finally, the low priority. These are to be developed last, and they could have already had recent development changes and require little to no work based on our analysis. Next slide, please. So some of the improvements, we looked at a number of different ways we can improve these lakeside parks. This includes pathway improvements, so the installation of paths, making the path accessible with different materials, and of course, upgrading any existing paths as well. There's environmental improvements. So we worked alongside Plan B Natural Heritage to propose locations for bioswales, swales, and wetlands, stabilizations of slope, the control of invasive species, and planting native plants as well. Beach improvements would be increasing the size of the beach, importing new sand, and where feasible, installing swimming buoys. The shoreline improvements could be a very large range of things, including erosion control, placement of boulders to help with erosion control, the installation of lookouts, and the installation of small craft boat launches. Barrier improvements, this would be more of consideration towards barrier-free design to help increase accessibility, the installation of natural barriers rather than bollards, and then of course, winter access for the fishing community. Parking improvements, we would like to add parking where possible. It wouldn't be a massive parking lot, of course. It could be anywhere from 3 to 5 spots for residents to drive to, especially if they have small children. Consideration for paid parking for the town to bring in income where feasible. And then of course, seasonal on-street parking. Again, this would be addressing the fishing community. Seating improvements would be the replacement of benches that are maybe run down, installation of new seating and picnic benches. And then we've created something called the Innisfil seating to help create a sense of place. And this would be the installation of unique Muskoka style chairs painted in colors for Innisfil that would be installed at various locations to help create a larger sense of place at the road ends. And then finally, accessibility improvements. This would include earthworks to address any grade challenges where feasible, materiality of paths, and then of course, reducing the amount of barriers. So next slide, please. So I wanted to take a look at a couple of these examples and how we could provide for the community to help increase the use of the waters. So one of them was the shoreline improvements. And when we were out visiting some of the sites, we ran into some of you residents, and we talked to you about how you want to be able to access the lake better with your kayaks and canoes. And here's a few examples of what can be done within the community. So for smaller lakeside parks or road ends, we would look at maybe installing something as simple as a stabilizing device shown in the top left, where you can just simply place your kayak or canoe and easily get into it. In the bottom left, there's the docking system, which is maybe something more appropriate for a larger location like Innisfil Beach Park, where you see a higher traffic. And then finally, something that could be done as well is kayak lockers or rentals. So the rentals can obviously help bring in some income to the town, but if there's lockers as well, it helps some of the landlocked residents have a place to store their canoes or kayaks where they can just go, unlock it, and take it out onto the water. Next slide, please. Next, I also wanted to talk about barrier improvements. So barrier improvements can be also very broad because it addresses accessibility, but also barriers to things like the fishing community in the winter. So for accessibility, there is a range of accessible paths that are still environmentally friendly that we would consider upon installation at the road ends or lakeside parks. Moving away from bollards, in a sense, we would propose natural barriers like boulders. But then there's the consideration of allowing winter access for the ice fishers. And this could be done with the simplicity of one removable bollard in between some of these boulders that could be taken out at the beginning of the ice fishing season and brought back in at the end of the ice fishing season. So it prohibits vehicles from accessing the water during the summer seasons, and then of course, opens it up during the winter. Next slide, please. And then lastly, we wanted to take a look at some of the ways we could introduce these things into one of the existing road ends. So here we're taking a look at 13th line, which is an interesting example because there's actually quite a significant grade change. Now, something to consider is we do want to increase accessibility for less mobile users as much as possible within Innisfil, but it's not always possible due to the significance of some of the grade changes. So an example here at 13th line, what we notice is there's two ways to interact with the water here. There's a high point and a low point. So the low point would be less accessible and would most likely require stairs to make it easy to access, although right now it is really just a gravel path down to the water. And then at the top side, we could see a nice lookout being installed where people can just go and sit down and enjoy the water. Some other improvements would be installing native planting and boulders to help stop from any erosion happening, as well as introducing the planting into a bioswale. And then from a privacy standpoint, sometimes the neighbors are very close to some of these road ends, and we want to make sure they're happy as well as other residents who are using this. So this could include the installation of some sort of fence as well as hedging to help with that barrier. So next slide, please. I've got a couple questions for you guys, if you wouldn't mind answering these. So why do you go to the Lakeside Parks to access Lake Simcoe? Is it swimming, fishing, boating, canoe, kayak, or just to relax? Nice. Looks like a lot of people like to relax. I like it. All right, should we go to the next Slido question? So what improvements, new amenities would encourage you to use the Lakeside Parks more? And this is one of those word clouds, so feel free to type in answers as you see them if you'd like. All right, those are some really great answers. Thanks, everyone. We'll definitely take a look at all of those moving forward. So can we move on to the next slide? So the next steps is you guys are going to be able to provide your feedback through our question and answer period tonight. And as well as getinvolvedinnisville.ca. So make sure, if you haven't had a chance yet, to go check that out and fill out any information available there. We will be finalizing the recommendations and preparing our implementation strategy. And then the completion of the Parks and Rec Master Plan update and the Lake Simcoe enjoyment strategy. Next, please. So now is the chance for our question and answer period. And we'd like to remind everyone about the chat. So please place any questions you have in there.
So while we're waiting for everyone to think of their questions, we did get a question and a comment during the presentation. The first question is regarding baseball diamonds. It's, can the 10th Side Road property accommodate the relocation of 4 to 6 ball diamonds, as well as the need for 4 rectangular sports fields?
Or Catherine, maybe you could answer that one.
Yeah, I was just coming on here. Well, we weren't actually looking to place all of those fields at the 10th line site. The ball diamonds were the primary consideration there, and their facility fit has to be prepared. But we were also recommending that the town look for additional property to locate the sports fields in the longer term, because we don't anticipate them being relocated immediately. And certainly anything that was going to be decommissioned would be done after new fields are built or new ball diamonds are built. So there would be no gaps in availability of facilities. So we are looking at two different locations. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but
all right, so we do have a few more questions popping up here. One is a comment, love the Kayak Lockers. So whoever's idea that was, good idea. Next one, this might be a bit more specific than where we're at, but maybe someone can talk to the process. And that is, what sort of trail or even just paved shoulders, or when will some sort of trail or even just paved shoulders on Big Bay Point happen? I assume that's a reference to Big Bay Point Road.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can answer that question quite yet. We are coordinating with the Transportation Master Plan, of course, and that process will probably shed some light on that as well. So the plan, though, that when it is available, when we post online, that type of detail should be in that document. So by that point, we should be able to answer that type of question.
And I think your answer probably doesn't change, but the questioner did clarify that they mean Big Bay Point in general, not just Big Bay Point Road.
Yes, so that'd be the same answer.
So I'm not seeing any more questions at this time. We'll maybe give people a couple of more minutes. I am going to paste. Oh, look, we did get a couple elsewhere. I'm going to paste for everybody, though, into the chat, the link to the Get Involved site. So if you do come up with a question or a comment after this meeting, you can absolutely send it into that link. I'm going to pass it on to Kara because I understand she's got a couple of questions. And then Kara, send it back to me because I've got one over here as well.
Okay, great. So I've got a couple here from Karen. So the first one, I'm not sure if we can address this one. Maybe Mike, you'll be able to better answer this. Innisfil Beach Park had trees removed last year, late summer, early fall. And now the beach 1 has parts that are showing significant erosion. Are there plans to address this? There's significant runoff down the road trail and down into the lake.
Yeah, that's well. Technically, this study is not including Innisfil Beach Park. I do know that there's another project that is scheduled to begin sometime very soon that will be looking at implementing. Starting to look at implementing Innisfil Beach Park recommendations from the master plan. So something like that, I'm sure will be addressed as part of that process. So that study is about a year-long process. So whether or not something has to be done in the interim, I couldn't tell you, but looking at it from a design and planning perspective, that should be happening within the next, starting in the next month or so and continuing on.
So yeah,
Right.
there definitely is an Innisfil Beach Park master plan implementation project ongoing and several other projects. I will say that my understanding, and I don't work in operations, so they may jump on me and tell me I'm wrong, is that that beach is not a naturally occurring beach. It is an artificial beach. So it always does have to have additional sand added. But if you'd like, Karen, if you'd like to send to us privately in the chat, to one of the people you'll see listed as host or co-host your contact information, we can look into the details and send you an email.
Perfect, because her follow-up was asking how she could get information about that. So great answer. She also had another question. Are paved shoulders or bike lanes being considered along 25th Side Road? Example from 10th Line North.
So I can take that one as well. That has its own project. So there's a 25th Side Road project ongoing. And again, we can send you more information on that as well. But that is to look at making 25th Side Road into an active transportation first corridor between Innisfil Beach Road and Big Bay Point Road. So depending on the segment of the road, it will have sidewalk, it will have multi-use trail. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting project and we can definitely send you more details on that as well.
And then another question I received, and I'm not sure about this one. Why has there been no discussion regarding the old gravel pit, which is about 23 acres in size?
So I believe, and perhaps the questioner can clarify if I'm incorrect here, I believe that this is probably referencing the gravel pit property in Big Bay Point. That's sort of where Big Bay Point Road curves. So I believe that's probably what that's referencing.
Yeah, they say on Big Bay Point. Yep.
So again, I think we'll have to probably grab you some more information about that one in particular. There have been some ongoing plans with that. You're absolutely right. I'm not sure what the current status is, however.
And then Mary Jane just asked, when will the road end decisions be finalized?
Well, I guess the process as we see it is in terms of this master plan is we're going to make recommendations for each road end. And then each one of those is really going to be its own project. So, there'll be further design discussions with the community as the master plan is implemented. And that means implementing, looking at specific road ends when it's time to do those improvements. So, it depends, the when is depending on where a road end, it comes in short, medium, or long term. And then there would be a process for that. So it'll depend on the road end, and so it's not something with a specific timeline. But I could see that if it's a short term one, something that needs to happen right away, then you're probably looking at the next year or two when those ones would happen.
So I've got a few more questions over here. I've got one that is. And again, this might be one where we simply need to chat with customer service, but the culvert at the road end at Mapleview has been blocked, so no water is running into the lake. Can you please explain why? There now appears to be an abundance of green algae. So I think that one is probably too specific for this particular project. But again, inquirer, if you would send me your contact information, I will get that answer for you and have it sent to you. So if you want to just direct message me or anyone else who's a host in this chat with your contact information, then we can get you that answer. Next question is there a timeline for any kayak docks or decisions about what type of docks might be used for kayaks?
No, there is no timeline. Again, it would be road end specific. So depending on which lakeside part we're talking about. And we haven't got to the level yet of specifically a type of dock or kayak launch. We will be providing more detail than we provided tonight. So that will be forthcoming in the next month or so, and so there'll be more to respond to once the draft plan is prepared.
We also have a general comment. Problem with road ends designs is that if attracting out of town visitors are parking on residential roads that are old narrow cottage roads, that can cause problems. So that's something to be.
Yeah, and we're totally aware of that, and what we're trying to do is scale the recommendations so that they're appropriate for that road end. So smaller road ends that we feel are more conducive to be, to support the local community, they'll be designed appropriately, and then larger ones that might be able to accommodate people from farther afield, they would be designed that way as well. So, but it's definitely something that's on our radar that we've heard loud and clear, that we want to make sure that it's designed appropriately.
So I do notice that Mr. Leo Deloyd has his camera on, and I think that means he may have an answer to one of our questions from earlier. Oh, you're on mute, Leo. Just give me a second and I will see if we can get you unmuted. All right, can you please try again now?
Hi, everyone. I'm Leo Deloyd. I'm the Director of Growth. And the question, I think there's two good questions that have come up. The 22-acre property on Big Point Bay Road is under active investigation. There had been some previous filling activities and contamination. So we're working with a consultant right now to understand what that contamination is. And until we work through that and what it takes to remove the contamination, we are not making recommendations to create any particular use here. There could be all kinds of opportunities for that site, including a smaller park. There's no need for, I think, in this study, a big park in that location. So that's pretty much where that's at. So there will be further reports coming in 2023. So stay tuned for that. The other question about parking, vagrant, I call it vagrant parking, where people come in and park in neighborhoods. We can also enforce parking and put up parking restrictions on the street so as not to block the driveways of the neighbors. So there's a whole bundle of things the town can do to address that concern. Thank you.
And I've got one more here, and that is, what is the next step in the timeline for all of these projects, and how could we best access the draft plan?
So the next step is that we have to prepare the draft plan. It is in progress. So it's not available yet, but when it is available, it will be on getinvolvedinnisville.ca. I'm guessing that that's going to be available sometime this summer. So it really depends on, we have to go through a review process with town staff. So once we go through that process, then it'll be available online for community commenting. So there will be a commenting period that will be, it'll be out there, and then we'll be receiving feedback on it. So best I can tell you right now is just stay tuned. If you're signed up on Get Involved Innisfil, then you'll get a notification once it's ready, and then you'll have time to review it and provide comments.
I've got another comment here. It's more a comment than a question, but for the road ends, initially you'd said a decision would be coming in February of 2022. Now it's another year to two down the road. Our road is presently an issue, and the residents were looking forward to a decision. We were formerly a private road.
Well, I guess what I can say is that there will be the recommendation in the master plan, if that's what you mean by a decision. So there will be a recommendation in the document. So that'll be coming in the next month or so. And then I guess hopefully that'll address your question, but there might be more discussion that has to happen after that.
All right, so I am not seeing any more questions in the chat. So unless you've got some, Kara?
I think I'm all up to date now.
All right, perfect. So I would like to thank everyone for attending. I'd particularly like to thank council, and if the councilors would be so kind as to turn on their cameras, we'll take this opportunity to introduce them and thank them personally. And if you guys give me a second, I will attempt to unmute you as well. So if you have any particular questions or closing remarks you'd like to provide, we can absolutely do that also. So just give me one moment here to go through here and find the right people on my list. So I'd like to welcome, in the order on which they appear in my screen, which may not be the same order on everyone's screen, Councillor Alex Waters, Councillor Carolyn Payne, Deputy Mayor Davidson, Councillor Donna Orsatti. Let's see who's next here. Mayor Lynn Dolan, Councillor Rob Nickel, and Councillor Bill Van Berkel. So hopefully you guys should all have the ability to unmute yourselves now. And if so, if you've got any closing comments or questions, please go ahead.
Thanks, Carolina. I just want to quickly thank you, staff, and on the consultants for all the work you've done on this project. It is a big file, and it is one that requires delicate balance, allowing access to opportunities for people across the town, for those who actually live close to them and have the issues that come with them. So we totally appreciate all this work and the fact that you have to crystal ball it 30 years into the future. And for that, we thank you. And we thank town staff for being so engaged, or sorry, town residents for being so engaged and for being here tonight and providing your comments. And please stay engaged. And, you know, this is your plan, this is your future, and we want to make sure that your issues are addressed as well. So a great big thank you. We all know COVID really solidified how important our outdoor spaces and our community places are. And we want to make sure that that's available into the future for all of the residents in Innisfil. So thank you very much, everyone.
So I'd just like to thank you again. Once again, I will remind you to please go to getinvolvedinnisfil.ca/land and lake with any comments you may come up with after the fact. Thank you again for coming. I'd like to particularly thank our IT staff for streaming this live on YouTube, and that will soon be available on the town's website and on the Get Involved site as well. So please feel free to take a look at that again. And once again, a big thank you to all the members of staff, to our consulting team, to Mayor and Council, and to all of you for attending and for helping us on this very important project. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you.